black Americans. Some of us hope that this would mean that he would be open to universal policies that might disproportionately benefit blacks and other stigmatized groups. But the Obama presidency has been largely characterized by inordinate cautiousness on domestic policy and inordinate excessiveness in military policy. There has been no major initiative that's come forward since the energy that was devoted to healthcare reform to address the central problem that faces the United States, a major economic collapse. Nevertheless, there have been some ideas that have been advanced, and I'd like to focus in detail on one of these and briefly on the other. Two bold proposals, universal proposals, that have been largely ignored or dismissed by the Obama administration. First of these is a proposal that I have worked on for a while with Derek Hamilton. We refer to it affectionately as the baby bonds proposal. This proposal was triggered by the recognition that the racial and ethnic wealth gap in the United States is the most significant economic disparity that we're faced with at the moment. The ratio of white households' median wealth is 20 times that of blacks, 18 times greater for whites than Hispanics. Indeed, the severity of this disparity is so great that traditional kinds of explanations that attribute it to profligacy on the part of blacks, a tendency to have the bling factor in our face all the time, really are not supported by careful evidence or study. The central consideration that leads to this disparity is the presence of a great racial disparity in the capacity to transfer resources across generations, both through the forms of inheritances and what we call in vivo transfers in economics, which is the shift of resources from one generation to the next, while the members of the older generation are still living. Both of those mechanisms of transfer of resources are the major cause of these huge disparities in wealth that exist in the United States. So what Derek Hamilton and I have been proposing is the equivalent of a child trust fund that's provided to each newborn infant, a graduated child trust fund, where the magnitude of the trust fund would increase as the child's family's wealth poverty status increases. So for the kids at the lowest end of the wealth distribution, or born into families at the lowest end of the wealth distribution, the trust fund could be as high as $50,000 to $60,000. For a newly born child in Bill Gates' family, we would give them a token trust fund of approximately $50. This trust fund would be accessible to all youths when they reach the age of adulthood at the age of 18, and we could set some restrictions on what types of purposes this fund could be put to, including the possibility of having it be put to use for the purposes of financing higher education. Nevertheless, this is an idea that would address these huge wealth disparities using the mechanism of a universal program, a program that applies to all Americans, but that would have a particular benefit for the most wealth-deprived sections of our population. The second proposal that I want to talk about in greater detail is a proposal that I've been shouting, screaming about for approximately 4 years. I started screaming about this as soon as the Great Recession hit. So that what we should do is inaugurate a federal job guarantee for all Americans. I've argued that we should institute a National Investment Employment Corps, which would guarantee a job for all Americans 18 years and older. In effect, what we would do is give individuals a paycheck rather than give them money, rather than giving money to private companies in hopes that the private companies would actually create jobs. So this is a stimulus package of a sort, but it's a stimulus package that involves direct job creation. At the state and local level, we could have inventories taken of the types of tasks that were needed, both in terms of the provision and maintenance of physical and human infrastructure, ranging from bridges, roads, and highways, to the improvement of school structures, as well as the provision of quality child care. This would be a direct route to full employment. Any individual receiving a job with the National Investment Employment Corps would receive a minimum of $20,000 per annum in wages, plus $10,000 in benefits, inclusive of health insurance. If we assume that the mean expense of hiring individuals for this program would be about $40,000, again with $10,000 in benefits, the mean expense of hiring an individual would be $50,000. If we put 15 million Americans to work, the cost of the program would be about $750 billion, which is less than the amount of the first stimulus package. Indeed, it's substantially less than the sums of money that the Federal Reserve Board has routinely transferred to the investment banking community. The total net cost of the program would be even lower. We could reduce a host of so-called entitlement programs. For example, unemployment compensation could be drastically slashed. The expenses associated with maintenance of TANF could be drastically reduced. By introducing as a component of the benefits package that's associated with jobs with this program, we could introduce a retirement component, and this could permit us to modify and reduce the expenses of Social Security, while we grandfather in older Americans to continue to have access to the Social Security programs. Indeed, this type of an approach could function as an effective anti-poverty program in the United States. In short, we could eliminate poverty in the United States through the guarantee of decently paid employment to all Americans. We could also eliminate minimum wage laws, and we really wouldn't have to worry as much about regulating the financial sector. We could let the money cowboys be cowboys on Wall Street, but we could ensure that the cost of their behavior would not be imposed widely upon the population. So the job guarantee would function as an insurance program for the general American population against the foibles of the financiers. We can protect the mass of Americans from mass unemployment. We can insulate Main Street from Wall Street. We can keep the 1% from jeopardizing the 99%. There are precedents. The first precedent that I want to refer to is in the U.S. experience itself. This is the inauguration of the Works Progress Administration and the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression. Unfortunately, neither of these programs were permanent. They were gone with the wind by the middle of World War II. I am proposing a universal program for all American citizens that would be a permanent job guarantee and would be long-lasting and enduring, and it would ensure that we remove the threat of unemployment from all Americans. A second example is the Jefes de Hogar program in Argentina, where unemployed heads of households are given a guarantee of employment if their income falls below a particular threshold. It is not a universal program, and it is a means-tested program. I'm recommending that we have a universal program without a means test. Any American who would want the public sector job would have access to it. A third example is the National Rural Employment Guarantee in India. This is a program that targets